So now we are rushing right along because we've only got about 10 minutes left to our next segment, inshallah. Indira, welcome back to the Y Factor.
Thanks, Maran.
So Indira is a solicitor. She's also someone with an amazing economics degree and, information and a major in international trade and finance. So who better to talk to about the economic dramas in the US of A other than Indira? Okay.
Thanks for the plug.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. We just want to understand what's happening in America.
Okay.
That's really
break it down for us art students, please.
Okay, well, basically there's actually two issues going on at the moment, and people, I guess, are a bit confused as to it because it sort of happened coincidentally at the same time. So you have the budget crisis, which is actually separate to the debt crisis. So the budget crisis, the US government, they have the authority to spend according to the budget until the 30th of September every year. And from 1st of October this year, the US government doesn't have the authority because it's actually been stopped at the House of Representatives by the Republican Party. So at the moment, the composition of the Congress is that the Democrats are in power in the Senate and the Republicans are in power in the House of Representatives, and then Obama has ultimate power as the president. So what's happened is that it's the legislation for the budget has been passed at the Senate level, but is being stopped at the House of Representatives. And the reason that it's being stopped is because it's being used as leverage for the Obamacare initiative, which is the public health initiative. So the Republicans are trying to stop spending for that initiative and have, as a consequence, stopped spending for most of the government besides essential services like defence and other health
This
services.
might be a bit of a side note, but I am never going to understand why Americans are so set against a public health system when it's one of the biggest, complaints that they have over there. They don't have something similar to our Medicare system. So
We've got a great system here. I mean, unless Abbott reverses that, but...
Oh, let's not jinx it.
Let's not.
Well, I mean, in terms of that, the US, generally speaking, has a very much non-government intervention sort of perspective, that neoliberal sort of perspective that, private sector sort of is where some of these services need to be coming from, which is vastly different to most other developed economies in regards to health anyway.
Well, the rollover effect of this entire economic situation, last week we were speaking to Aya and Olga from the US, and they were saying that basically anything that's been funded by the government was shut down, whether it be national parks, public monuments, websites for government departments, all of that was down. But what does that actually mean?
Okay, so basically, so you have the essential services and the non-essential services. So the essential services, for example, the military are still in operation, but you have services, like you said, like national parks, immigration, I mean, besides entry into the country, but, visa processing and stuff like that, which has pretty much stopped. And there are about 800,000 public service workers at the moment who are on unpaid leave and have been since the 1st of October. So you have the budget crisis, but then you also have the debt crisis.
So what's the distinction there? Because in my mind, I must admit that I had it all as one. You had the budget crisis and some reference to a ceiling.
Okay, so basically the budget crisis is completely separate. It's just happened sort of at the same time. The debt ceiling, what that is the US government has to pass legislation through the Congress in order to increase its debt. So if it wants to take out more loans, it has a particular ceiling. So at the moment, I think it's nearly 17 trillion, and they're reaching that ceiling. They've reached it. And the problem was once they reach it, they're going to start defaulting on their loans. And if that were to happen, it would be unprecedented. It's never actually happened in history. So it would basically cause the markets to go crazy,
I
haywire.
think, what they were saying yesterday on the news was that basically if this happened and if no change had happened today, today was supposed to be a D-Day for America, but they would no longer be able to borrow any money, as you're saying, and therefore all of their paybacks would have had to be in the cash that they currently had.
Exactly.
And their signature would have been no good as a guarantee of any loan anywhere around the world.
That's right. So basically, if it were to have happened, which it hasn't, because a temporary deal has been struck, which I'll talk about later, but if that were to have happened, they would have had to have relied on what they do have on cash, which I think is, at the moment, I can't remember, I could be wrong about this, but I think it was 30 billion. Once that had run out, at that point, they would have started defaulting. And as soon as that had happened, if it were to have happened, all of the government bonds that are currently being used as security against loans all over the world would have basically been no good. So this would have caused a problem for banks, because banks rely on government bonds as a security. What effect would that
actually have had on not just America, but on countries like Australia, other countries around the world?
It would have had a global impact. Economists can predict this sort of thing, but because it's never actually happened before, they don't really know what would have happened if it had actually occurred. But basically, no confidence in banks. The banks would not have been able to give as many loans, so they would have cut back on lending. This would have had a huge impact on the US government, US economy, and worldwide global economy.
Was it going to change the value of the dollar or the currencies?
Yeah, definitely. So the US currency is the reserve currency at the moment worldwide. So anything that happens to the US currency affects the foreign exchange market in I guess the biggest way possible. So it would have impacted not only, the domestic economy, but of course also the global economy.
So what was the temporary fix that you've just quickly referenced?
So the temporary fix is they've struck a deal. The Republicans have struck a deal with the Democrats, and it's basically, so it's fixed both of the problems for now anyway. So the budget crisis has come to an end because the government can now start back up and start offering these non-essential services again. And also the debt ceiling has been increased for the moment. So that means that the government can continue to borrow and can now make the repayments.
What about Obamacare? What happened with that?
So it's been, for the moment, the deal has been struck that there have been no changes made, bar some minor changes. So it's pretty much still intact, and it will be in force now from today.
Okay, so that's a good thing, but I was really confused reading the news that came out today because the deals were struck today, this morning. There didn't seem to be any celebration or relation that Obamacare was going through, and it was pretty ambiguous. But, does this mean that America is safe?
For now. Basically, the Republicans and the Democrats will be meeting again in December, and they will have to strike a deal because post-December, the government could have another shutdown as a result, and also another debt crisis. So it's a temporary fix for now until a long-term solution comes into force. But it's really interesting because a lot of analogies have been made to the Whitlam government. Now, the US, the structure of the US democratic system means that these budget crises are, not entirely common, but do occur on a relatively regular basis in comparison to the rest of the world. Australia is one of the only countries that has had a budget crisis besides the US, from the developed economies. And so the last time that it happened in the US was...
was that the one 7 years ago?
I think it was during the Clinton years, so it would have been longer. I think it was 17 years ago. So that was the last budget crisis, and that went on for longer. And it's been compared to the Whitlam crisis, except in the case of Whitlam, of course, he was dismissed as a result. So
it does sound like a bit of a hung parliament situation, like you're saying with the Whitlam government. But yep, like you mentioned, Obama's still in place. Well, this is really really interesting. I mean, I don't know. I never thought I'd see the day that America in my lifetime would fall to its knees like that.
And seeing the everyday impact, I mean, getting screenshots of websites that can't be accessed and things like that. I don't think we ever imagined that in the United States you'd see that daily impact.
It's surreal. But yeah, I mean, this has been fascinating and informative. Thank you so much, Indira. I have to say, personally, I'm such a noob at economics. I have no idea.
I concur with Moran.
But,
thanks for breaking it down.
Yeah, and that actually brings us, quite sadly, to the end of today's episode. So we're going to be uploading this on Facebook, inshallah. Keep an eye out for that. Meanwhile, we're going to move right along to the rest of the Voice of Islam's programs. And thank you for joining us today, the 17th of October. It's been a pleasure with Indira. Faye, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
And this is the Y Factor on 87.6.